Thanks to all those who suggested a band name for our illustrious musos. The most popular band name suggested was Predestiny's Child. I wish I could say that the voting was close, that the tally was jumping, and the winning name scraped through as the survivor. But actually, I suspect the voting was rigged by those wanting to portray the band as independent women, which is real flattering for Luke, or maybe just rigged to get me to say their name. Either way, I can see when the writing's on the wall, and I don't want to lose my breath when I know that destiny's fulfilled. Besides, who can say no when the band name they voted is so bootylicious? Abraham and Rahab, what vivid examples of living faith, a faith that acts by placing what is most precious to them in God's hands and giving themselves wholeheartedly to His plans. I pray that God convicted or reconvicted you on Sunday to have a faith that lives and breathes and acts and shows itself in all our lives. If you want to watch and consider again, or if you missed it the first time, check out the link below. A few important things have happened since we first published the Way Forward document. First, the government produced a new Step 2.5, allowing 50 people to meet for church, and then removed restrictions on numbers for indoor venues, except the 1 person per 4 square metre rule, starting 1st of July. So, government rules now let us meet. Secondly, the Department of Education is happy for community groups to use schools. And Rosalie have told us that they're happy for us to use a school starting this week if we want to. That's wonderful news for which we thank God. And so for now, we're going to keep meeting in mini churches until most of us feel ready to meet all together again. That's where we're up to. And we'll talk more detail when we get closer to that time. So if you're itching to see people and you haven't joined a mini church yet, please do let me know via the link in your email. Tired of the COVID season? Looking forward to rest? Tors has kindly shared her summary of the biblical theology of rest, with Jesus' wonderful promise of rest now.
The theme of Sabbath rest is introduced on the very first page of the Bible. In Genesis chapter 1, God spends 6 days bringing order to creation, but on the 7th day, God enters His creation and He rests. While the other 6 days have morning and evening, the 7th day is special and it's an unending day. God invites His creation to rest with Him in His presence and enjoy His blessing. But then we turn the page and humans, by their sin, forfeit this rest. Adam and Eve are cast out of the garden where instead of resting in God's presence, they're destined to work and toil until they die. But God initiates a plan to restore humanity and creation as a whole to a liberated state of rest. God promises Abraham that through his descendants, God's people would enter an Eden-like land and enjoy His presence and rest forever. But as time went on, Abraham's descendants, the Israelites, were working as slaves in Egypt and certainly weren't enjoying God's promised rest. But in the time of Moses, God rescued the Israelites from their slavery, and He commanded them to keep the Sabbath day as a reminder of God's act of salvation and also as a sign of God's promise of a final redemptive rest in the Promised Land. After wandering the desert for 40 years under Moses, Israel finally entered the Promised Land, and she began to taste some of the blessings of Sabbath rest. And King Solomon built a temple, a permanent dwelling for God. When dedicating the temple, Solomon said, "Praise be to the Lord, who has given rest to His people Israel, just as He promised." But Israel's rest didn't last long, and due to their rebellion and partly due to her failure to keep the Sabbath day, Israel was exiled from the Promised Land, once again forfeiting her rest. In the book of Luke, Jesus launched His public ministry on a Sabbath day. He went into the synagogue and he read from the book of Isaiah about a Sabbath ritual called the Year of Jubilee. He said, Today, these scriptures are fulfilled in your hearing. Jesus declared that he is Lord of the Sabbath. Throughout his ministry, he confronted disorder and darkness and performed miracles on the Sabbath day. And when questioned about this, Jesus explained that the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. The strict application of Sabbath observance actually missed the ultimate reality to which the Sabbath pointed, that is rest in God's presence. As Paul said in Colossians, the Sabbath law was merely a shadow of the things that were to come. The reality is found in Christ. So for believers today, the enjoyment of God's presence is now found in Christ, in whom we anticipate the unending rest to come, and who said to his people, "Come to me, all you who are weary, and I will give you rest."
This Sunday, it's James chapter 3, verses 1 to 12. Read ahead, see why the first verse is a terror to preachers, and please keep praying for our church family, for those gathering together in mini churches or at home, and for those who are on their own. I'll send out a link later this week.